Welcome to the Fandomize Podcast. This is our second show number 2. We're going to be talking about Amazon's new fan fiction initiative with my friend Kathy, and then we're going to have a little music from the Doubleclicks. And later on in the episode, we're going to chat with Derek and Nick. They're working on a fandom documentary called Trek to Trot. So a little bit of something for everybody. Sit back, relax, and listen in. Today I have got Kathy from Australia here to talk with me about the brand new Amazon Kindle world. She doesn't know anything about it yet, so shh, don't tell. So you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everyone.
I know you feel silly.
I know I do feel silly, but that's okay. It'll get natural after a while, I'm sure. Because, I really am dying to know that they've let fan fiction in. Amazon, of all people, fan fiction. I want to know about it.
I know. Well, we'll talk about that, then we'll come back and talk about something else, because this is the big news in the fanish world. So much so that when I wrote a post about it, I said if it had been April, I would have sworn this was an April Fool's joke. I mean, everybody...
Oh, okay, yeah. I would have too, yep.
But it is not. So basically what we've got here is Amazon has teamed up with Warner Brothers,
yes,
who owns a license to a certain television show that we like.
Yep.
And Alloy Entertainment. Right now, they're talking about 3 licenses: Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liars, and The Vampire Diaries.
Ooh.
The deal is anybody writes fan fiction for any one of those properties.
Yeah.
You upload it to Amazon. You can sell it, make money off of fan fiction.
Oh my gosh.
And Amazon is going to give part of the royalties back to the license holder, which is why the license holder is letting it happen. So it's a win all around. Amazon gets, their kickback for selling.
Yep.
The fan gets their money for selling their work. And the license holder doesn't lose anything because they get a kickback on it as well, plus just the benefit of everybody's talking about their property.
Wow. And are they going to open it up to more fandoms?
They say they are. They say that these are the first 3.
Right.
And I think the fact that it's Warner Brothers, well, there's 2 things about it. Warner Brothers obviously has Supernatural, which for those of you listening is our favorite.
Yep.
But Supernatural isn't part of the Alloy Entertainment. Alloy Entertainment is a girl license. It's a media tie-in company that does books and things. The other thing, which not everybody realizes, is that those 3 licenses started out as books. So Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liars, and The Vampire Diaries, were books. So it's probably a little less complicated because then Amazon is going back to the original authors saying, making a deal with them. Now, when you get into properties like Supernatural or show that was developed,
writers, what are you going to do? Yes. It should be one person's intellectual property, shouldn't it? Well, person per organization, yeah.
Right. Well, Warner Brothers owns the license, and probably Kripke's the creator, so he would have, probably his say in it as well. But
I'm thinking Doctor Who and Arrow, and who else does Warner Brothers have? No, they don't. No, they don't have Who. Would they open it? It's only going to be CW?
No. See, so here's the thing. So what it says on Amazon is it starts off by saying news stories inspired by books, shows, movies, comics, music, and games, which means Amazon's hoping this is going to work. They call it Kindle Worlds, by the way, and they think this is going to work, and they're going to expand this out into every license they can.
Right.
I think, though, that the easiest time they're going to have are licenses that did start out as books.
Yeah.
It just feels like that's a cleaner path. Now, here's the other interesting thing about all these things is that, let me get switched to the page here so I can see what they're talking about. There's a couple rules. The first rule that everybody jumps all over, makes the biggest joke about, is that it says no pornography or inappropriate content.
Yeah.
So that's it. Half the fanfic writers in the world just went, that's me out.
Forget it. I mean, well, I mean, surely it can be as much as you see on the show.
Well, this is the question. Amazon is being vague, in how they say that, because that's going to give them the rights to pull anything that people might complain about.
Right.
The big question becomes, with a lot of slash content.
Oh, okay. Yep.
If it's slash content, but there's no graphic description, is that okay? Because it says no pornography or graphic sexual depictions. So, two guys decide to kiss in the story. I would not consider that pornography or graphic sexual description.
Yeah, well, that's right. They shouldn't be buying it and downloading it. I mean, if you had clear warnings, et cetera, then surely that would be fine.
Well, but this is the other part of it that they don't specify, is there's nothing in the rules, as it were, that says that your work has to be canon, for lack of a better word.
Right.
So they could have come along here and say, you can't, part of this rule is you have to play within the rules of the original license holder. Mm-hmm. So if the characters weren't meant to be together, in the case of two male characters or two female characters for that matter, then you can't do that. But it doesn't say that.
No.
It says, except, inspired. Novels, novellas, short stories inspired by the worlds that we have licensed.
It's that big word, isn't it? Inspired.
Right, but inspired
gives you
carte
license.
Blanche, to go out wider. And then obviously they say no crossovers because you can't cross over to something that's not a licensed property. Yep. They have, love this, using our cover creator to design a cover for your book. So they're going to supply artwork from these shows apparently, so that you can create artwork that goes with it.
So
because let me just say, because that's the other interesting thing. Even though these go back to books, the photography that Amazon is using to publicize this are the actors from the TV show. So there's no question that Amazon is talking about the TV shows.
Yes. No question at all.
Okay, so there was another big thing. Okay, so this is the other one that I love, that people are getting crazy about.
All right.
Trying to see if I can read it directly so that we understand it. Here. Kindle Worlds is a creative community where worlds grow with each new story. You, the author, will own the copyright to the original copyrightable elements such as characters, scenes, and events that you create and include in your work. The world licenser, which is what they're calling the person who owns the original license to whatever.
Yep.
They will retain copyright to the original elements of the world. Makes sense. Now, when you submit your story in a world, you are granting Amazon Publishing an exclusive license to the story and all the original elements you include in that story. So you can't publish it anywhere else once you give it to Amazon. That's also not out of the ordinary.
Okay. So obviously anything that's been previously published can't be uploaded either.
Not if it's still out and about now.
Right. So theoretically, I had something that was publishable. I don't think I do actually, but hey, if I did, I could pull that from my page and then upload it, and therefore it's no longer available to the public, just to them. Is that okay?
Right, exclusive. Generally, too, they're talking about paid. That you can't give it to another paid source, which in this case is hardly likely anyway, because nobody else is taking this stuff.
Right.
But now, here's where the legalese gets interesting. It says, this means that your story and all the new elements must stay within the applicable world. Now, is that what we were talking about before? Does that mean you have to play within the boundaries that have been set up? Or does that just mean, you can't send them, you can't cross over, you can't whatever, because they specifically address crossovers later. So that's a kind of an iffy sentence. Gets better. We will allow Kindle World authors to build on each other's ideas and elements. Mm-hmm. So you create a character, another fan can take your character and use it in their story.
Wow.
And I don't know if you remember, but we have seen this in Supernatural fandom where somebody created a character and then cried all over that some other fan used that character.
Yes.
Which I think is a riot. So you borrowed everything from Warner Brothers, and then you complain when somebody borrows from you. We won't use that word, that S word. We're going to use borrow.
All right, borrow, yeah. Another interesting concept to start a wank.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it gets one better. And this is the one that's really upsetting people, and I cry BS when anybody says this. So here's the line. We will also give the world licenser, so that's the Warner Brothers and the author who created it, a license to use your new elements and incorporate them into other works without further compensation to you.
Mm. So you create this, wonderful character, and other fans like this character, and they take hold, and it gets big enough that the powers that be take notice, and they go, yep, like this person or this persona, we're going to grab it, and next thing you know, your character's on TV.
Exactly. Now,
is that
cool
a good
thing
or not cool?
Exactly. Well, what do you think? Is that cool or not cool?
It's really hard, actually, because you know what? If it went to just the level of other fans, I'd be flattered, but I'd still feel a bit nyeh about it. If I got to see my character acted out on the small screen, I'd probably be rapt.
Well, see, and this is what I feel, because, of course, people are complaining, and a lot of it are professional writers, address that in a moment, but a lot of people are saying, oh, Amazon's not being fair, that they want to steal our work. Mm. But first of all, again, you borrowed all those Vampire Diary characters to write your story. Mm. So if Vampire Diaries wants to borrow your character back, hey, turnabout is fair play. You should be quiet.
Yeah.
Not you, but you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Second of all, if they came to me and said, we love your character and we're going to put it in the show, I would be stoked. I would be telling everybody I wrote that character. And I am not going to quibble over the fact that they didn't pay me for it. Because the other thought is, if you're that good, if you really made that big of an impression, chances are you're going to get something out of it. Mm. Either they're going to offer you a contract to write a script, or they're going to invite you to the set, or they're going to do something. Because if you're really that good, they're not just going to take it and run.
No.
Because there's more where that came from.
That's right.
And, plus the bad press of we just took it and run, would be a thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other part of it is, what do you really think are the chances that they're going to find a character and they go, oh, we love
elements, doesn't it? So, I've gone straight for character, but I guess there could be, I don't know, themes or spells or, whatever's you create. It doesn't necessarily have to be a character.
True. And that actually makes this, but you know what? That actually makes this more important from a legal standpoint, because one of the biggest problems that has always been with fan writers and script writers who sent unlicensed, what's the word I'm saying?
Yeah, that word.
Yeah.
Painted.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the problem has always been that there are only so many ideas in the world, and what happens is they create something 2 months from now, and then you've got an author on your hand saying, hey, you stole that from me, and I'm going to sue you.
That. Yep.
Absolutely. And so this actually also protects the license holders in case they come up with an idea that is similar to what somebody put in fanfic. And that happens all the time. Like, absolutely. How many Supernatural stories have we seen? Yes.
Have I written something and, the Lance of Destiny was the big one for me, going, oh my God, I just wrote a 10,000 word story about that. So,
right.
Yeah, and I'm thinking,
imagine
they saw my story, they stole it, they put that there just for me.
Well, that's it. Imagine you had put that story on Amazon prior to that showing up. You'd have to have that thought of, oh, did they see that? And, that's where it came from. Rationally, they're not going to read all these stories. No. I think the scenario you said is that if something really floats to the top, then it's going to become noticeable. If everybody starts buzzing around a particular piece, that, that might be something they'll go and look at.
That's right.
But I think they're going to be very cautious because they don't want to end up, being accused of being unfair with this. So they have sit here, everything has to be priced 99 cents to $3.99. That's right. The amount you put up. And then in the content guidelines, again, pornography, we don't accept pornography, but again, who gets to decide what pornography is? Or offensive descriptions of graphic. Now that's a new thing. Offensive depictions of graphic sexual acts.
There goes /
Well, maybe not. It depends who's deciding what's offensive.
Well, Amazon would be deciding on what's offensive, and I'm sure that characters that are known. You could present original characters, male, erotica kind of thing, and they would accept it on that. But when you pair characters that are well known, I think they'll go, nah.
Okay, but here's the interesting switch to that. Pretty Little Liars, which is one of these, has a lesbian character in it. So
that's
if
canon,
you are right, so it's canon to write it, and as long as you're not writing it in a derogatory way, that's allowable. So it certainly should also be allowable to bring in another, two male characters or pair one with a male character who's already there and write it in the same manner that the other storyline gets written. I mean, you can't sit here and say, well, it's okay to write the canon one, but you can't write the other. Again, keeping with the fact that you're not being derogatory and you're not being X-rated graphic.
I don't think that Slash with Damon and now I've forgotten his name.
Stefan.
Oh my God!
Well,
I did watch the final.
Yeah, because then of course you're into the brother thing, so
that's
that even
right.
makes it even.
I think that people will find that offensive. I mean, it's the same with Wincest. I don't think that they would pass that going up.
But it's also about getting caught. They're not going to read everything that comes across, so it's probably going to be up to if things get complaints from outsiders. Because you can imagine a lot of people are going to
label the warnings correctly, because they might look at that, and if people do label well and honestly, then they might just chuck it aside.
Yes, but again, we don't know how. I don't think anybody has a real handle on how many works they're going to be faced with as soon as they open the doors.
When did it start? Do we know?
Well, this is the thing. They technically, they announced it a couple days ago, but they haven't opened to submissions yet. They have, right now they're being cagey about when that's going to be. You can sign up to be notified when it's going to happen.
Right.
So presumably it will be soon, because obviously they wouldn't have announced if it wasn't going to be soon. And I'm also thinking, because all these shows, well, Pretty Little Liars is coming back, and Gossip Girl's gone. That's not even on TV anymore. So, it's kind of a good thing for the summer. I would imagine that the folks at Kindle who came up with this, particularly because it's with Alloy, are thinking that they're aiming at a teenage to college age audience. And that those are the people who are going to be responding to this, so summer's perfect, they're all home and bored. I don't think they understand or have an idea, even a clue, about how many 50-some-year-old women are going to be submitting.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I don't think they are. And, well, let's go to the rest of the guidelines and come back around. It talks about offensive content, no racial slurs, excessively graphic or violent materials, excessive use of foul language. Again, excessive. That's eye of the beholder. Interesting that they even allow it, because these are technically teen properties. Authors' responsibility to assure their content doesn't violate laws of copyright, trademark, privacy, publicity, or other rights. So, just people who love to put songs in the middle of their stories and stuff, all of that would not be allowed because technically you'd be breaking somebody else's copyright doing that.
Right, yep.
This is a tricky one. Poor customer experience. We don't accept books that provide a poor customer experience. Example being poorly formatted, misleading titles, cover art, or product descriptions. We reserve the right to determine whether content provides a poor customer experience. Now, it doesn't say anything about bad writing.
That's basically what they're saying, isn't it? I mean, that is what they're getting at, yes.
No, it isn't.
No?
It isn't, because this is the thing about Amazon's self-publishing program, is anybody can publish. As long as you can format it properly, you can put your book up there. Amazon is not going to judge whether or not you're a good writer. They would never, and they don't really care, because think about this, and you know this. Somebody puts up a juicy Vampire Diaries story, people are going to buy it, even if it's badly written, because how much bad fanfic have we seen people jump up and down for and go, oh my gosh,
yes,
that's the best thing.
Very true, yep.
Yeah. So I think to some extent, again, the cream's going to rise. I think certain authors will become known. They'll have better reviews, those kinds of things.
Yep.
But you're always going to have, I would hope not, like horribly can't make an English sentence bad, but certainly people who wouldn't be able to sell in a
different form. Yep.
Yeah, in an edited format or any of that.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not sure, and I don't know that it's required. When I look at, where we've all come from, the encouragement of being able to put your work out there and see if people are interested in it is a good thing. It
is, Cynthia. It is. I agree. I'm having a go at you there, don't you?
I'm going to say. All right, you. Excessive use of brands. We don't accept excessive use of brand names or including brand names for paid advertising in your book. So they can't drink a Diet Coke every time they sit down at the restaurant. And no crossovers, said obviously because of the other elements, copyrighted elements. You can't do anything from. So I don't think there's anything terribly unreasonable here. The biggest problem that people are having is this rights situation, that Amazon is stealing our rights. And, really, Amazon does not need to steal your rights.
That's right.
Have
and the thing is, if you seriously feel that way, too much, don't upload your work.
Well, exactly. And I didn't say, because I didn't read the top part, standard royalty... standard royalty for 10,000 words is 35% of net revenue.
I'm not exactly sure what that means.
So, and I think it says Amazon will pay royalties to the rights holder and to you. Standard royalty rate for works of at least 10,000 will be 35% of net revenue. And I'm assuming that's going to be split between. So 35%, if you sell your book for $2, I'm no good at the math, you get 35% of
you get 70
that $2 is the profit, and then that gets split between you and the license holder, and Amazon gets the rest for hosting it.
35 cents.
Per dollar, right.
So that's what you end up with. If it was $2, it would be 70 cents, and then if it's split between me or the writer, the author, and the license holder, then 35 cents per $2.
Right. That's the question. They're not really clear here whether the 35 is getting split or the 35 is what's left after everybody else is taken care of, and that's considered net revenue is the 35.
Right.
And then they're also going to do short works, which is something they haven't done before, and they're calling experimental, between 5,000 and 10,000, which I think is probably closer to what most fanfic writers write, would you say? Or?
Look, these days they seem to be getting longer and longer. As you know, I like to read stuff that's not ongoing. I like a good start, a good finish, all in one night. But yeah, more and more it's, you know, one piece a week and it's all connected and it's chaptered out. So no, it's getting longer, I think.
Well, what's interesting here, and I've seen companies who tried this in the past, what they're thinking is they'll get, and of course, typical of we're recording, my headset is telling me that I'm almost out of battery.
Yeah,
because the technical situation.
Mm-hmm.
The shorter works, you'll only get 20% of the revenue because it costs them higher credit card fees for batching smaller payments.
Right, of course.
So, but the other side of that is we know a lot of people read on their mobile phones, their tablets, but particularly mobile phones. A short story, a 5,000 word, fanfic quickie that they can download for $1 is something that's really likely to happen while they're riding on a bus or they're sitting waiting for the train or, whatever it is they're doing. They're bored in school and don't want to pay attention.
Yep.
Whereas they might have to think twice. And it's also a good introduction. It might be a way for some authors to introduce their ability, their talent to a new audience by putting up something small for $1.
You can't see me, but I'm actually sitting here nodding. Yes, absolutely.
It's not a video podcast. You must be verbal.
I go through stories, and sometimes it doesn't look like it'll interest me, but I will go just because I know the author's good. And usually 9 out of 10 times I really thoroughly enjoy the story.
Yeah, I'm absolutely still flabbergasted that they're doing this. However, I had to laugh to the person we were discussing earlier that this is what we were trying to do a couple of years ago when we were trying to legalize, as it were, fan fiction. And, we got a lot of pushback from people who felt that they didn't want to corporatize it or let the license holder be involved with license holders or any of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think times have changed, and I think we're willing, particularly because there's a paycheck at the end of it. That's the big difference. Yes. It's not just they're going to let you upload it, but they're going to let you get paid for it.
Yeah.
I'm blown away still. Yeah. And I'm dying to see. So I don't know. I would love to know, and we will probably never know how many people hit this, like the minute they open the doors. Come through.
Well, look, I wouldn't be at all surprised. What was that thing, was it America or England? Where it was, they were advertising all these really cheap stuff and then it crashed the server? Or was that you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it happens. It does. It happens a lot because these companies, that don't really understand the amount of the hits they're going to get all of a sudden.
Yep.
Yeah, and Amazon should be smarter than that, and they should, possibly roll it out like one license at a time or something. But I suspect that they don't really have a clue as to the door they're about to open.
No. However, being such a huge organisation, it may be that they've got the ability to handle all the uploads. Not screening, that could be a big deal for them, but their server, etc., it shouldn't be like crash it or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's definitely better. And I think the other part that people aren't thinking through is you do have to format for Kindle, which is not it's not a 2-minute job. You can't just take your fanfic from Word and upload it here.
Right.
You are going to have to set it up for Kindle. You have to format it properly. You're going to have to do the artwork. You have to fill out tons of forms to get these up.
Then you're going to have to buy a Kindle, aren't you? Because I don't own a Kindle.
You don't have to. You can use Kindle. You can get a Kindle app for your iPad. I use mine on my iPad.
I don't have an iPad.
And you have your daughter's iPad. And if you have a smartphone, you can get a Kindle app on an iPhone or Android, and you can read online. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, there's a Kindle app online, too.
Yeah. And do you have to pay for that?
No, the app is free.
Because I downloaded the free reader from Amazon, and after a month, it wasn't a free reader anymore.
I don't know what that would be, because you shouldn't have any trouble. Amazon wants you to read Kindle books. And so it makes every effort to make that available to people. With every they have their own readers. They've got Amazon readers, Amazon Kindles and Kindle Fires and all that. But, like I said, I use the Kindle on my iPad. I got rid of my actual Kindle and I use it on the iPad now. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's there. And, the other part of that is all of the stuff, for everything it's going to get uploaded, how much of it's actually going to sell.
True. Very, very true, because they're going to have so much, and that's why I guess you're right. Writers need to get known. Also, there's the other thing. Will some people look at it and go, why the hell am I paying even, 99 cents when I can just go to LJ or Tumblr or somewhere that has fanfic and read it for free?
I know, and it makes you wonder, is Warner Brothers or Amazon going to start cracking down on fanfic that shows up elsewhere? Are they going to go after fanfic.net and tell them they can't use those categories anymore in order to force the market there? I think
it's a lot wider, isn't it? There's implications.
Yeah. And ever since, that's been a big problem. When I come from the days when people sold fanzines, and you didn't make a lot of money off them if you made any money off them, but people paid to buy fan fiction because it was the only way you could get it.
Yeah.
And so, now it's not. The difference being, because people do still buy books, is if you're good, if you're really good, and you put it up, it's the same as writing a tie-in novel. People will come and pay for it as long as you aren't, said you're not also putting it out someplace for free.
That's right, yeah.
But you're going to have to prove your worth. And I think there's people who can do it, certainly.
I wish I was into the Vampire Diaries, enough to write about it. I'd give it a go. I'd give it a go.
I did the same thing, so that's none of those 3 licenses or anything I write.
Yeah.
And I think the other part of it is a lot of the professional writers who do tie-in work, really are seeing it's already a really tight market. There's so little tie-ins, being done compared to what it used to be.
Yep.
And that if now everybody can get it on, Amazon, there's even more. There's even more reason for publishers not to publish full works.
Yep. I think it's a very brave move, what they've done, but I also think in the long run, because they've got the sustainability, they're not going to crash, all of that kind of stuff. In the long run, I think that this is going to be excellent for them, and probably for good fanfic writers as well.
Yeah, I think it could be. I think it really could. The question again is then how good does it have to be that they're going to expand into other licenses, and how big of this a situation it comes to deal with, because that's going to be the key. I mean, if it's only these 3, it's a cool experiment and it's a huge step in a new direction, but it is still 3 very female-oriented small.
Exactly.
Well, they're not small fandoms, but small properties. Compared to it's not Harry Potter, it's not Twilight. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So, I wish them luck. I'll be interested to follow this journey and see where it takes us.
And so I should ask, if it was a fandom that you do write, if it was Supernatural or if it was Doctor Who,
yep.
Would you
Absolutely.
Would you submit something?
Absolutely.
You would?
Yeah, absolutely I would. Yep. And and then I'd feel validated, that? If I could upload and get paid to write all the stuff that I write, I'd feel validated.
But don't you also feel like there's a different standard of care when somebody's going to have to pay for it? Or you don't?
I don't know, actually. I don't know. I could guess that, yes, I would, but I've never even thought about it. I suppose, when I think about writing an original piece, but I don't know.
Right. And on that happy note, I'm going to sign you and I off the podcast.
Okie dokie.
And somewhere in here, I will put in some exciting music that will follow and that people can listen to.
Beautiful and not too loud.
And not too loud. I know, I've actually probably been talking too loud this entire time because I'm so excited.
Yes, it is. It's actually very exciting, and it's like I said, validation for all those hours that all our wonderful fanfic writers put in.
And now, as promised, we're going to take a little musical break. This one is by the Doubleclicks, and it's called Spock Impersonator. Enjoy, and then we'll be back with Derek and Nick to talk about their fandom documentary. So stay with us.
He had the shiniest of hair, and he walked into the room with an authoritative air, his carefully shaped eyebrows so severe you could barely even tell where the prosthetics met his ears. I fell in love with a Spock impersonator, from his ears down to his phaser and his sweet communicator. I thought my search for love was at an end, but being highly logical did not make him a very good boyfriend. When I first saw his furrowed brow, I knew the ideal man had come and found me somehow. I mean, what else could I think when he looked me in the eye and told me prune juice is a warrior's drink? I fell in love with a Worf impersonator, from his forehead to his baldric and his badge communicator. I thought my search for love was at an end, but being strong and angry did not make him a very good boyfriend. Oh, why did I come to this con? This day has been nothing but a roller coaster of emotion. I don't have the time or money to wait in line to see Leonard Nimoy, but look over there, what an interesting boy. I fell in love with a Q impersonator, which seemed like a bad idea even 30 minutes later. I thought my search for love was at an end, but he transported me to another dimension and played psychological games with me and my friends.
I'm here today with Derek and his team, and they're going to tell us about a documentary project that they're working on, dedicated to, of course, fandom. That's your quickie introduction. Derek, jump right in.
Hello, I'm Derek William Michael Hook, and with me today is...
I'm over here. I'm Nick Nelson.
And we're from the Trot, a Phantom Tale documentary team.
And right off the bat, explain the title of your documentary to me.
Well, Trek to Trot is supposed to be a documentary that covers fandoms from just from what really is essentially the big essential starting of what the modern fandom is, Trekkies, to what is one of the newest ones, which is Bronies. So from Trek to Trot.
And why is it that you decided to do this momentous project?
Well, for me personally, what it started out with is I was doing a shorter documentary, which I still doing the final bits of editing on the Brony fandom, which is when I went to Cancel Out Gardens in 2012. And while there, I just sort of I can't find a good analogy for it, but it's like I went into expecting to just put my foot in a shallow end of a pool and just fell into the deep end. Just seeing firsthand it was my first really convention of that size, is to see how the fandom has sort of affected so many people in so many different ways. And that's just sort of inspired me to expand it into a more larger project.
And had you had experience with any kind of fan conventions before this?
Pretty much no. It was my first big convention I attended.
Really? I did not know that.
We learn something new every day.
Nick though, he has a lot of experience at several conventions.
Not too many. I've been to about, counting the car conventions I used to attend with my dad when I was younger, but My first fandom convention was a local Morphicon back in 2009. And from there, I thought it was awesome. I'm like, wow, there's like 300 people here. And then as I went to the bigger conventions, there was, 5,000 people. And those were just purely epic. And I enjoy going to each and every one that I can.
And, you just made an interesting point that I actually had never thought about is car clubs are in their own little fandom. We often think of sports and music fandoms, but, their cars are actually a really great example of another real mainstream. They don't usually, I don't think, refer to themselves as fans, but certainly it's the same experience, right? It's everybody coming together with a particular love, and you share that in a way that it's like you speak your own language, I guess.
Still directed me. I went to one Cavalcade of Customs with my dad. It's at a convention center. They have tickets, people lined up. They got booths. They got people on show. They've got stuff to sell, stuff to trade. It's the entire time I was trying to make similarities between conventions. It was kind of the same. I was talking to my dad. Hey, maybe you should go to one of these conventions and see what I'm like. I'm seeing what you're like, because he's a car guy and I'm a weirdo.
Which actually ties in nicely to a question that I think you wanted to ask in your documentary, which is why people who are in particular fandoms are considered weirdos. I mean, if you're a huge sports fan, you buy every ticket to every game and you paint yourself purple, people are okay with that. That's what you do. But if you wear a Star Trek uniform, you're a little odd.
Well, I believe it is sort of goes back to sort of a core ideology with people is we naturally just fear stuff we do not understand. And when you're sort of new to a fandom and sort of looking in, I feel that you just naturally are more skeptical about it. And usually fear does not usually transfer directly into fear. It usually transfers into anger. And just sort of you don't understand a fandom looking in. So if it's not popular and widely accepted, so sports, you sort of just it's easier just to accept it as something odd and weird than just say it's something I don't get.
And so you guys are going to let's go back to the project a little bit more. The goal is that you want to go around to a variety of conventions and film. Tell me a little bit about the process.
Well, right now, the overall idea is we're going to try to go to 4 to 6 bigger conventions. And over the course of that, get at the conventions themselves, get interviews with the guests, cover some of the big events, and try to get some of the celebrities actually from the media end of it, voice actors, the writers, something like that, in that realm. But also get sort of the fan art projects, the fan charity drives, and just large community efforts. And then in between the conventions themselves, we go into the more individual fandom projects. So we can just take I call them day trips too, just to sort of cover a big sort of individuals in the convention fandom community and sort of what they are sort of putting forth for others to see.
And so obviously this takes a lot of money, and in order to raise that money, you've decided to try some crowdfunding. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, just sort of try to cover a lot of the costs, especially travel and gear. I decided to go with Indiegogo crowdsourcing. If for all those out there, they're I've never heard of Indiegogo. It's the competitor to Kickstarter, which is becoming pretty well known nowadays. There are pros and cons of each, but the big defining difference between Indiegogo and Kickstarter is Kickstarter is all or nothing, while Indiegogo's you can actually set a flexible funding where actually if you don't meet your goal, you still get some of your funds with a higher penalty fee.
And that's actually, can be a really huge difference in at least walking away with something. People obviously donated because they believed in the project, and this way they still get to donate even if you don't hit your goal. The other thing I find about Indiegogo is I feel like they lean a little bit more toward creative arts projects than Kickstarter has some, but I feel like they're more about entrepreneurial, I designed a new toaster and I want to build it kind of thing.
Yeah, I sort of agree with that. Like, Indiegogo, like, it was actually designed originally just for filmmakers. It's like, that was the original idea behind it, was just to sort of get independent filmmakers some funding. And like, they sort of opened it up to everything else. So like, it still remains within its roots. Well, Kickstarter has actually gone sort of more professional, like, but like, it's sort of like helping professionals establish, like, who already have their own business or like film studio or something, just like to fund a project that's for a studio they already have, sort of thing. I say so, like, it's more for, like, Indiegogo, I just find by its nature is more like forgiving to like lower end professionals, and also has just some other features like, for instance, like Kickstarter, you can only launch a campaign, and like if you fail or succeed, like you can only launch one campaign with that. Well, with Indiegogo, you can actually launch one or two different funding campaigns for like your one project.
Oh, that is interesting. And so when you, well, I guess I should say right off the bat, how's it been going so far?
Not that good.
Well, it's tough. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Nick.
Yeah, I've been trying everything. I don't know. People aren't biting yet. Maybe they're waiting until they get paid or the end. But even internet celebrity Link Cara, I got him to retweet mine, and he has 22,000 followers on Twitter, and still nothing.
And it's just one thing I actually learned from like Indiegogo is when you go in, you sort of have to, I wouldn't say have your own following, but have somebody you know that has a good following, so you can actually get well-known public awareness of your project, because that's the main thing you have to sort of establish, besides having a good built campaign page.
And that's what I wonder, if it's less about, if it is more about visibility and traffic coming into the page. Does Indiegogo, can you actually see how many people have visited the page?
Oh, yeah, it actually goes in their data tracking things. And last time I checked, it was over 300 or so.
And so what's interesting, 300, I mean, is kind of nice, but it's probably nowhere near the kind of traffic that you need to see. So what happens, let's be really honest here, what happens if you don't raise enough cash? What happens to the project?
It will sort of go on, because I said we're sort of dedicated, but like we won't be able to fully like fund to get the hotels for like all of our crew like to actually go and attend, and like we'll have to cut conventions and actually cut like what we can actually film at conventions. We basically have to scale everything down to like a pocket budget, and it just won't be as professional nearly by far. I like to say it would probably go into like a go into a storage mode where like we'll keep making stuff, like we'll try to possibly relaunch the campaign later just to sort of like fully go just sort of help get support later, because I feel like since we're not really established yet, that we're just going in and trying to get established, it's sort of harder. But like if we continue forward, even if we say start a Kickstarter later in the year or something, we'll have material to actually show that we're actually really dedicated to this and actually have high professional standards we can maintain.
I wanted to talk a little bit more was about the fandom, process, I guess. What's, one of the things you talk about in your write-up at Indiegogo is about this sort of discovery phase of why fandom, why do people do this, and, why do they go to Vampire Diaries instead of going to Twilight? There's two vampire fandoms, but they're two completely different sets. Just can you talk a little bit about, I don't know if you haven't interviewed anybody yet, about why or how people get hooked into fandom?
Well, it's really odd. It's like one of those things, like it can go from several different routes. But usually with a fandom, it usually just starts with you just generally hearing over like a forum message or from friends like saying, oh, this is good. And then you just sort of go and try it now. Nowadays, often on the internet, and then you just try sampling it. And then there's a point where you try one or two episodes and you just sort of get hooked. And then from there, I usually go through and watch the entire season or like media, whatever it is, if it's a book or a movie series. And then from there, it's like you just, after you finish the media and like sort of consuming it yourself, you sort of start to look for other people that are interested in what it is. Sort of like a shared interest. You sort of like going from there. And then it's where it gets interesting, where the fan community itself, from like other people interested, actually starts to become its own movement and like self-sustaining.
That's a good point, and particularly what happens with old fandoms. Look at, even though Star Trek obviously has had a resurgence with the new movies, this is a fandom that self-sustained for a very long time while nothing was happening in the media, while there were no new movies or anything like that, but they kept it going. They kept going to the conventions, they kept writing the fan fiction, and kept that happening. And then you have other fandoms that are huge and burn bright, and then that's it. It's gone. The project's gone, and out the door they go.
I was wondering about that because Star Trek, it ended the series in '67, and the next movie came out in '79. So that was quite a big gap of the fans just going off of the TV show.
Yeah, and you have to wonder how much that fandom helped keep people involved so that a studio was willing to come back and do it. We've certainly seen cases where the famed Save Our Show situations where fans band together to save a property that was canceled. They did this with Chuck, the TV series that was a goner, and these guys band together in a smart way because they went to the advertiser, Subway, and said, here we are, we're going to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars if you back this show and get the network to put it back. So we've also gotten smarter instead of just sending a bunch of little doojiggies to a studio in order to try to get them to bring a show back.
Nick was just mentioning how that sort of happened with Family Guy and Futurama, and actually going back to Star Trek, the original series was canceled a year before it got its final cancellation. But the fan community just kept sending so many support letters saying we want it back that actually NBC brought it back.
But for all intents and purposes, though, it really is a great example of a fandom that kept flying the flag even when the studio was ready to walk away from the property. And and that's a testament to a couple things. It's certainly a testament to the property itself and how people really found something more there than just entertaining television. And then also just shows you the power, which is one of the things that I'm behind, is when a fandom gets behind something, they are a force. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your individual interests in fandom?
You mean our personal fandoms we're all part of?
Yeah.
Well, right now, generally I'm appreciative of books, but not really necessarily any solid book series. But in terms of traditional fandoms, I am a otaku and also brony myself. Anime, I guess I got into anime early 2000, I would say, and mostly with Adult Swim, their lineup. But then the brony just sort of caught 2 summers ago, which I was just, it was hey, I have the hub on my channel, so I started to give it a chance and just started watching episodes and got hooked pretty much instantly from the writing.
I watched the Aquabats on the hub.
I love the Aquabats.
Me too. I also like ELP. That's a recent thing I deeply into. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Just got into those. But I guess fandom for me started all the way back when I was young, when I got really addicted to Mega Man games, and that was all I played. I was delving into the show, the books, no, they didn't have any books. I thought they had some kind of, anyway, the toys and everything. Then later on, it went into anime when I first came across Samurai Pizza Cats back when I was watching the first season of Reboot. And later on, it went into Sailor Moon. And that went into Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, and the huge anime explosion of the 90s. Then after that, came around early 2003 with the furry fandom when I found that through a Google image search back on dial-up. But, yeah, from there it's been a pretty crazy 10 years. But through that fandom, I've met a ton of people, and that's the cool thing about being a fandom is that you already have a launching point, so you can just get into introducing yourself to other people and then finding similarities, making new friends, and just build up your networking from there, and you have a good group of friends.
Well, and you mentioned anime in particular is, I think, one of the fandoms that really embraces the cosplay and the costuming in such a monumental way that it's become fashion. I mean, especially when you look at outside of the United States here, people who will walk on the streets in things that we would consider to be, costumes for the convention, but it's really become a lifestyle more than just a fandom.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've seen one of my actually favorite manga I cannot pronounce the word, but like manga creators right now is Hiro Mashima, which is known for his earlier series was Rave Master, and he's doing Fairy Tail right now. He like retweets like pictures of like either his own art, but also he has like random fan pictures of like cosplayers. And some of the cosplay just gets so dedicated and like high in detail. I'm always impressed by just how much like, because these aren't just bought stuff. You can tell somebody handcrafted these things, and it's just impressive like how much work they put into it. And often, sometimes some people wear it actually outside of a convention, but some just put all that work in just going to a few conventions a year, and I just have to admire that dedication.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've seen some really beautiful pieces, and not to certainly take anything away from the Star Wars people who always do a great job, coming out in costume, but it seems like as you were saying, a lot of the anime has this level of detail, and I guess the color too. They're very vibrant. You can't help but notice it, and they've got everything from like this tiny, tiny little object they might just be carrying on a string off the side that means something really important to the character. And you don't have to get it. I guess is the bigger point is you can appreciate it without understanding all the nuances, because it's like looking at a work of art.
No, just being a cosplayer, usually when you see a better cosplay and you know all the nuances, then it makes you feel insignificant. It's like being an artist and seeing a better artist, and you just sort of have that period of, I don't want to draw anymore. But yeah, you just got to appreciate it and do it because you love it.
Let me ask you about one other thing you just touched on a little bit there. Because fandom has become a little bit more acceptable, as it were, the creators behind a lot of these projects are more involved. I think in the past, especially for legal reasons, a lot of them were really concerned about being involved and maybe a little afraid of getting involved with fandom. And I don't know if it's because the internet has given them kind of that safety barrier, but you'll see so many more people communicating with fans on Twitter, making their own videos, and obviously going to conventions and meeting with people. But I feel like the distance between the fan and the creators, whether it be the actors or the writers or, whatever, has gotten a little smaller. And is that a good thing, or is that a bad thing? Should we be keeping our fandom separate from the creation process?
I think it's a pretty good thing overall, because it sort of allows them to sort of interact with their exact audience. And I think, as you mentioned, the internet is a big key to this, because before, you really had to go through several layers of encryption and just from the process of publishing and all that. Where if you ever wanted to interact with the community, you had to be proofread through all that. Now you can just sort of send out a tweet or post a Facebook message, and this has sort of become more expected. I know from example, I already brought up Hiro Mashima from Fairy Tail. He constantly retweets fan messages and just sends out his own art. He'll just doodle on the side and just send it up on Twitter. But also with the Brony community, I know is a lot of the show's creators, from the artists to the from the storyboard artists to the voice actors to the writers of the show, all of them often are interacting with the community, either going through conventions or through Twitter or through Facebook posts, or several of the voice actors I know actually are having musical videos actually with several of the famous Brony musicians.
And what is really cool about that as well, and I've got to give it to the internet, is that we've had a chance to get to know people who we idolized a long time ago. These shows and things that we grew up with as kids, that now we can find those people and we can tell them how much we appreciate their work. I'm a really big fan of production, as it were, the people behind the scenes that bring everything, as you were saying, from not just the actors or even the voice actors, but the people who did the artwork, the people who did the writing, because all of that, is what pulls us in. And so being able to find somebody, who worked on a project maybe 10, 20 years ago and say, I really appreciate that, and it still sticks with me today, is huge. And I got to think they appreciate it. I guess there's a few that would rather not hear, again, out of fear, worry that, you're going to say something terrible to them. But I think in general, they've got to all be thrilled that this many years later, their projects live on.
And that's actually just one thing I sort of appreciate about this sort of fandom culture, is like me and Nick are both actually in our university. Electronic media and broadcasting is our major. And we're just sort of like us to sort of watch media so heavily influence people's lives. Is this sort of like an ultimate sort of appreciation we can just sort of have for it. I mean, it literally is art influencing society, which is just remarkable.
Well, it is very true. And I think the part of this also, which goes to what you're doing, is there's so many more options these days of, you used to be able to watch it on TV. That was it. If you didn't catch the show when it was on or catch the movie when it came out in the movies. But, then we went to be able to record, then we were able to get DVDs. But now with live streaming and people like Netflix and Amazon picking up short-lived shows, creating their own original works, it feels like the opportunities for fandom are just getting bigger and bigger. Because, I don't know if it's happened yet, but there certainly has to be a fandom for well, I guess like YouTube people, the YouTube stars that have started their own fandoms, Felicia Day and some of the others who that's their world really is on YouTube. And they're just as big a star as they are the TV people that come into our homes every week.
Well, actually, you remind me of one fandom that I remember in particular that sort of reminds me of this is so that created itself was like the Homestuck fandom, which is based around like a sort of online comic. I say sort of because it mixes media from games, like video and audio thing. It's like a very long, ongoing web series, and it is like a dedicated fan base, which you'll see like popping up at anime conventions and like this, and like it's very dedicated fan community, and really it just sprung up really from somebody's web comic series.
What I like about, I think with what you're doing, and again the internet allowing you to do this, is you can chunk this project up. You can get some interviews and start to build your bigger project, but be able to share along the way and involve people and, kind of create, your own little time capsule of what you've done and who you've spoken to.
It's sort of split up because part of it actually is going to be heavy web presence. We're going to be releasing samples and this sort of actually made for directly the internet pieces from our project. But overall, I'd like to have a feature-length film produced and actually released on Blu-ray and also direct download for the film because I just want to actually just sort of go through the whole process of making a film from conception and like funding and struggling through like getting all that done to actually printing it on, having it printed and be able to sell it and give it out. But a lot of it actually is going to be put on the internet too from our YouTube page where we're just going to be putting out more content that sort of is a sample of what the fandom community is, but way before the actual feature film gets released.
There was something I did want to ask you about earlier when you mentioned books. Book fandom is one of those things, as much as I love to read and have been very dedicated to certain books, book fandom is a thing I have a hard time getting behind. And I don't know, like maybe because I'm just a more visual person, but certainly there are some really solid fandoms for book series or particular authors, in the same way that we're all celebrating Star Wars and Star Trek.
I think part of it is this media, it sort of induces more media of itself. And books is just sort of like as core as you can get to a story. So that's to sort of be filtered up over time. So like Harry Potter series was like, what really helped spawn that's popularity is its movie series. And like actually prop up the Harry Potter fandom. And I feel like what books really struggle with now is since they're such a more old-fashioned thing, it's sort of hard to sort of build it up without sort of a media show. Now, there are exceptions, like the Game of Thrones series is becoming an extremely big fandom. And actually, I just started watching the HBO show like a couple of weeks ago, and I'm actually impressed. Yeah, it is a really good show. But I think another hard thing with books is just sort of like what sort of goes back to Game of Thrones is it's sort of the release schedule.
True.
Because books, if it's a very well-known series, like the publisher will be like, yeah, we expect it to at least be once every 2 years. But otherwise, an author can be jumping between several different series. And if you want like the next in the series, you could be waiting 5+ years, and it can be a very long wait. I usually just wait until a series is done before I pick up and just plow through it all within like a week or two.
Yeah, it's like people do with marathoning. That's become the popular thing to do with old TV shows, that you have fandoms that you weren't into before, and you sit down and go, I'm going to marathon through the entire Buffy the Vampire Slayer run from beginning to the end. Because the one safety net, as what you're saying there, is knowing that you've got an ending. Because boy, I hate getting involved really deep into a show and then it's canceled before they ever have a chance to even really wrap an ending. And that is the worst. It's sort of like reading fanfic that never got finished.
Oh, the fanfic thing I know is actually very popular with those fanfic communities where author will start and then just stop. But one thing actually reminds me of is like that sort of annoys me is the anime. I like to call it the anime ending. So many animes do not have a proper ending, mostly because most anime is based off of a manga that's still ongoing. So they often have either filler or made-up ending that's not in the canon of the series, or it's so open-ended. Like I think Inuyasha is one of the biggest series known for this.
Wolf's Rain.
Oh, and Wolf's Rain. And it's just sort of like they leave there. It's like, oh yeah, we're just going to leave it there. It's like, what happens next? It so infuriates me every time.
That would make me crazy. Although I guess, on the other hand, for the creative souls, it gives you that open ending so that you can take it and run with it and do your fanfic or do your own artwork or whatever you want to do to sort of end that in your mind. But yeah, mostly it really disturbs me. And I do like that lately a lot of the TV networks have been, at the very least, giving shows an opportunity, giving them enough warning that they can wrap a show up, not the way necessarily they had intended to, but at least to say, look, we're going to give you fair warning, so start to bring these, storylines to a conclusion. But mostly, and they probably do it just so they can put it out on DVD, going, well, at least then we can package it as a whole thing. But
yeah, that's one of the benefits of like saying narrative production over, say, reality TV is actually the DVD and like Netflix. This sort of like the online market, just sort of outside of the TV space, is becoming so big that it actually is profitable to give it a sort of good ending, or at least a somewhat conclusive ending. So like you can actually sell it on DVD, Blu-ray, you can put it on Netflix and on Hulu, because that's such a big market now. Where with reality TV, if you were into that, like it's sort of like, oh yeah, I've watched it live, and then what next? Like,
no, it's true. It is true. And because there are TV shows that I will watch and over and over again, movies over and over, but it's a rare reality show that I would go back to watch a second time, because it has that game show kind of element that, like, yeah, I already know where they've been. Very interesting point. And I wonder, there must be numbers somewhere about sale, because there are some reality shows that they sell on DVD, and I do wonder if it's mostly people who didn't see it. I missed the whole season of Project Runway, so I want to catch up and watch it. But particularly anything that ends like that, like, Survivor. Now that I know who won, like, American Idol, am I really going to go back and watch the whole thing? So let me wrap you guys with one last really important question. If you had your fandom wish, what would it be?
Well, for one, I'd buy a full suit, because those are pretty expensive. I don't know who buy, but I did promise a lot of my friends in the fandom that once I'm like rich and famous, being an editor in California, making the big bucks, I said, I promise you I'll keep you in my mind and I'll help you out for being such a good friend to me in the fandom. So I'd probably help give my friends some money. I already got you in my mind.
Yeah, and for me, from I guess more of a producer level, I'd really just like to meet like some of the more people behind the show, like especially the writers behind, like, for example, the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic series, or even like way in the future, like meet creator of Fairy Tail, like Hiro Mashima, because just sort of like I just like to get their perspective on like what fandom is and just sort of like how they feel about it, because I'm just very curious, and also just sort of like their thoughts on the writing process.
That would be cool. If you could have them all to dinner and sit down in a room together, can you imagine that conversation? That'd be neat.
It's like having Robin Williams or Jim Carrey to your dinner.
It is, and as a writer, I have to say, writers don't get enough respect. We love their work, but we don't always realize we do. And certainly, I think there are fewer people who know who wrote a project, and that's the other thing that's great about fandom is fans know. They know who wrote an episode. They know the directors. They, actually even know some of the other behind-the-scenes people, and that's part of their appreciation of the project. So I'm all for power to the behind-the-scenes people. So why don't you tell me, and so we can tell everybody who's listening, how they find your project and how they can donate to your project.
Well, you can find our project on our Indiegogo page, which is Trek to Trot, and also our Facebook page, which I've established and I'm trying to maintain at least one post a day. And also, you can post feedback there and just send us messages. And also, like I said, our email address is trektotrot@gmail.com, where if you have a message like ideas, you can send us there. And also
on Twitter, don't forget you made a Twitter account if you want to retweet us.
Yep, I have a Twitter. If you want to retweet us, but I say if you do want to contact us, I would say through Facebook or Indiegogo would probably be the best. Yeah, but like user feedback is one of the biggest things I want to give this project, because it is, as core, as Trek Trot Fandom Tale is about the fandom community, which sort of, for it to truly be a documentary about the fandom community, it sort of has to have that interaction with the community.
Absolutely. And I think that, I think it's a great project. And I know that really the hard thing obviously is just getting it out there and getting people to know more about it. So hopefully we can help you get some more eyeballs on the project, the plan, the Facebook page. So we'll funnel people over to Facebook. That's a great place to watch and keep track. It's exciting. So I wish you a lot of luck with your project. And I'm going to send people your way. And that's it for our second podcast show. I want to thank my guests, Kathy and the guys from Trek to Trot. If you check our website, that's fandomize.com, you'll find all the show notes where you can find out more about their projects. And hopefully you can help the guys by donating a little money to their fandom documentary. Hope you'll keep an eye on us. Come back. We're going to have some excellent guests coming up. We've got a comic book author. We've got some supernatural fans that are going to come talk about that fandom. And this summer, hopefully, we'll have the Doubleclicks themselves to talk about their fanish music. So you have a really great rest of your week. And come visit us on fandomize.com so you always know what's happening in fandom. Everybody needs a little more fandom in their life.